Podcast. I'm Roman Loyola here with Jason Cross.
Good morning.
And Michael Simon.
Hello, sir.
WWDC is happening this week, and Apple held its keynote on Monday to showcase the new software features coming to Apple devices. This show was all about Apple Intelligence, which is what the company is calling its feature set based on AI. So I thought, even though Apple saved that part for the end of their keynote, I thought we should start off our show talking about the AI.
Hey, could I just say, like,
front of the
Apple
show.
Intelligence is like the corniest, most brilliant Apple thing ever. Like, it's so smart, but yet it's also like, really? But it's like, well, you have to do that. Like, yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
They call so many things Apple blank,
Right.
and it lets them say AI, but not be other people's AI.
Right. It's just like the most Apple thing ever, and I love it. And I also like realize that they probably had deep internal discussions about whether or not they should do this, but it's perfect. They can't not.
So Jason actually wrote an FAQ on Apple Intelligence that's up on macworld.com.
Yeah, it's like this big group of models and stuff that swap out different modules for different expertise on the fly and stuff, but they just built it into tools that you can broadly categorize into 4 categories. And I think that's the easiest way to think about it. So there's Siri, and that's a discussion on its own. Like, we should just say, like, big Siri improvements is one part of it. Writing tools, what I would call reading tools, like tools for organization and summaries and stuff like that, and then images. And those are like your 4 sort of main, everything Apple Intelligence fits into these groups of features. Apple's big pitch for how this is different than all the chatbots and stuff that you're used to is it runs on device, and if it can't run on device, they use this special private cloud that has all the security stuff and doesn't save any of your information and all this other, there's a million Apple privacy things. It's their own servers. It knows all the stuff about you because it's running on your device. So it knows your contacts and your text messages and your mails and all this other stuff. So it's going to give you a personalized responses and results from stuff, and not just like general world knowledge like ChatGPT and everything else. Like, it knows about you and where you've been and what you do and who your friends are and all that stuff. And then, of course, all the privacy stuff. Tons and tons of privacy stuff. That's part of why it runs on device, but there's a million other ways that they're like, we're not sucking up data to train our AI with and all this, everything else.
The private cloud compute thing, which is what that's, when the AI has to go into the cloud, it uses something called private cloud compute, which is basically a server farm running Apple's products. That's pretty groundbreaking in the sense that, is anyone else really doing, like, has anyone else cracked that code for encrypted cloud stuff?
Nobody else is doing it. I don't think that it's because it's a new invention. They want your data to train their AI.
They don't care to do it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, that part of the whole thing is that, like, no, we want to use, even if they don't want to tie it to you, they want to use all the data that you supply and the searches that you're doing and all this stuff to improve, to quote, improve their products.
Right.
But, and then of course some may want to sell your data and stuff like that. But Apple's thing is very different. First of all the code that runs on it, the servers can't run code that's not Apple signed. So even if some hacker got in, they couldn't like upload malware to their servers or anything like that. They're opening the code to third-party audits so that they can make sure.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, so that outside researchers and stuff can look at the code that runs on their servers and say, no, it's doing what they say. They're not BSing you. And then the way it works is if it has to go up, like if you send a photo and you're asking some question or you want to do something with the photo, it only sends just the data it needs to fulfill your request and not any of your other data. It sends it, it's all encrypted, it has to obviously be unencrypted to run the thing. It runs the thing. It sends your result encrypted again. It sends your IP address through a private relay, so Apple doesn't even know who you are or anything. And then it doesn't save any of the information. None of it's written to disk ever. So they don't save any of the stuff that you send up. They don't know who you are. It just does the processing, sends you the result. That's it. And that's nobody else is doing that. It's kind of what we expected from Apple, because not only do they have this sort of privacy principle that they're pushing, but also as a cost-effective measure, like not having any of your data to deal with is a nice benefit. It's bad because it makes it really hard to train your AI.
Right. Well, that's the
go
thing.
get
like
all
the
this
costs.
other data.
Yeah.
But it makes it cheaper to run the servers when you don't save anything. You're not saving up a ton of data. And it helps them out in legal situations when like law enforcement or government agencies or anybody else comes to them and says, give us all this data on this person. And they're like, we can't. We don't have it. We don't save it.
That's what struck me the most. Like, we knew this AI stuff was going to be super private, but like this is almost like a culmination of everything Apple's been saying for the last several years. But most people don't really see it. Like Apple tells you everything's private. Apple tells you they don't have access, and most people aren't going to ever really come into a situation where that's going to matter. But
most people honestly don't care.
They don't care. But with this AI stuff, they will care. It's going to absolutely be part of this whole thing, because we're talking about machines learning from us. And that's a real kind of somewhat creepy, somewhat nebulous, somewhat, just very dystopian view of what could be, what could go wrong. And when Apple says, hey, none of this is going anywhere but your devices, your own little personal AI that's not going anywhere else, I think that's going to be a huge selling point once this really kind of takes off.
I would hope so. I just remember how many people gleefully downloaded apps on the App Store that take a photo of you and make 50 different AI avatars in different styles. And oh, by the way, it just sucks up all your photo data. Not just the picture you send. It just starts sucking up your photos. And everybody was like, okay, look, I'm a cartoon. I'm a Simpsons character. And they were just like happy about that. And sometimes I don't know if the privacy angle really moves the needle, but I'm glad they're doing it that way.
AI stuff is not available yet in the betas that Apple released.
When it releases to the public, when iOS 18 comes out in September, it will be labeled as beta for the public.
Okay.
And some of these features won't even be out yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And only in English. So some of the features will roll out over the course of the year, and other languages roll out over the course of the year.
Okay.
So
I kind of get the point that Apple was kind of forced in a way to push this out now, and they would have been just as happy to have another year to work on it and release it in next WWDC.
Yeah.
Well, kind of along the lines of the forcing the hand, one more thing I want to bring up about the AI stuff is that Apple, with some of its features, is using ChatGPT.
Right.
Yeah, it seems to be a fairly limited, but it is integrated into. Best I can tell, it's just Siri. I might be wrong about that, but I think it's
not
only...
quite. I'll get into that when I go through the AI features, but let's start running them down.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the stuff that's about like summaries and organization, because that seems like the simplest stuff. That is basically, it can read and summarize text, and it's going to use that throughout the system. So like your Mail app, instead of showing the first 3 lines of each message, which may not tell you anything, it will show you a 3-line summary of every message. And it will be able to categorize all your mails into different categories like transactions, priority, and updates for things like newsletters and stuff. Obviously, you can always look at all your mail, and all that stuff's coming later this year. It can summarize your your notifications. So the top of your notification stack will be the most important what it thinks are the most important notifications, and like a little summary of each, instead of you having to go through like 100 notifications on your screen. You could set a focus mode that will, as your notifications go off, the AI will look at them and go like, summarize that notification, go like, does this seem important? And then silence it if it doesn't seem important, and just let through the ones that seem important. Summarizing web pages, things like that. So that's basically just going to help you be organized and understand things at a glance better, right? The next sort of way that another sort of part of their language model, how it deals with text and stuff, are going to be writing tools, which is select a block of text and pop up a context menu, long press on iOS, right click on a Mac and stuff. And you get all the ability to change the text. You can proofread it just for grammar and stuff. You could have it rewrite that section. You could change the tone of it. You could say, I want it to be friendly, I want it to be concise, stuff like that. You can summarize it, make a table or make a list. That is one of the areas in which ChatGPT will be integrated if you want. But it will do that, again, all on device and stuff. And of course, you can have it create text. You want to make it write a nursery rhyme or something like that. It'll do those things. And then the images, there's an app called Image Playground where you can make generative AI images. Apple is limiting the styles to being sketches, illustrations, or animation. So it's not going to look like realistic photos. I think that is a smart move. Mm-hmm. That's one of those things where you start to get into, if it gets really good, you're going to start fooling somebody into thinking like, this is a real picture of Obama picking his nose, or, whatever. Yeah, they don't want to get into that at all. So they're always going to be stylized, but it can take, this is a good example of how it understands things about you and your life and all that stuff. It could take all your contacts and your people in your contacts, and you could say, make a picture of my mom with a birthday cake, and it knows who your mom is. It has all the photos in your photos. It has the thing. So it's going to make a stylized image of somebody who looks like your mom.
The one they shared in the keynote was fine. It was very AI-y.
Yeah, they all look very AI-y.
Yeah. Like, don't expect magical stuff here from the model. Now, over the course of the next 12 months, it will absolutely improve. We've seen this with other image generators, DALL-E, the most popular one, where they get better quickly. Yeah. But the first ones are going to be very generic, not really looking like the person, but kind of looking like the person.
Yeah, and, look
as it learns, it'll get better.
They call one of their styles like Genmoji, which is you can create what looks like a Memoji, but a custom Memoji of that person in any outfit doing anything. And they look stylized like a Memoji does. That is one of the things that they said, dude, you can make custom emoji of people, use them in messages, in line. That's one of Apple's pitches for their AI stuff, is it's throughout the system. So for example, there's an image playground where you can just play with all this stuff and make images, but it's also elsewhere in the system. You can do this within messages. You can do this within notes. They showed a feature called the image wand for notes on like iPad, where you just circle an area where you've drawn some little sketch, and you can just circle it and have generative AI make a real image out of that sketch. Or circle an empty area, and it'll look at all the stuff you've written around that empty area to make up what should a picture here be, right? So those are cool things. It also, their image smarts goes beyond generating new images. It goes to understanding your image library. So if you want to say, show me pictures of Roman last summer wearing sunglasses, it's smart enough to know all those things and give you just those very specific images. That's going to help me a lot, because that's how I find pictures all the time. Images categorizes stuff so well, I just start using search. So being able to natural language search stuff is a big part of it.
As Jason explains all these features, you can clearly see how the privacy aspect is of utmost importance, because this thing has access to your mail, your messages, your photos, all of your personal stuff that you do not want just floating around to some cloud, maybe being protected, maybe not.
Yeah, that's Apple's whole pitch is that keeping it all private, we're doing everything we can on device.
Yeah.
When we do something in the cloud, we're not sending any data we don't have to, and we're not saving it. And because of that, we get to use everything we know. Your phone knows everything about you, everywhere you've gone. Like what the weather was.
More than anything else in your life, your phone
more than anything else in your life. But
everything.
that's a powerful tool for AI to give you answers and stuff that is for you, right? So that's their whole pitch. And then Siri's, of course, the big one. Siri's getting a big update. When you activate Siri, it's not going to be the little ball at the bottom of the screen. It's going to make the edges of your screen glow. You'll be able to talk to Siri in a natural way. Even when you stumble over your words and correct yourself and stuff like that, which I do all the time when I talk to my HomePod, and then I have to start over because it doesn't get that. It's going to understand those things. It's going to understand context, again, from all that data on your phone, stuff about you and your contacts and your people and stuff. And it's going to be able to do stuff between apps, right? It's going to be able to take actions within apps and between apps for you. Some of that stuff is again coming later this year, but big advances to Siri, and that's another place ChatGPT is. So what's with the ChatGPT integration? Well, it's being integrated in image generation, text generation, and in Siri. And the way it works is if you ask Siri to do something, or if you want to do a text generation thing or something that is beyond the capabilities of the models that Apple has running on your device, or it requires like just broad general world knowledge that, their Apple's models didn't suck up all the data on the internet to know everything about everything. It wants to know about you. So when you need something that's world knowledge, it'll say, oh, maybe ChatGPT can help with this. Is it okay if I ask ChatGPT? And then you can say yes or no, and it will send just the data for your request. It's anonymizing your IP address. It's sending just that one thing. If you have to send a photo, it will ask again, hey, is it okay if I send this photo? And then you send the photo. And then ChatGPT will give you the response. If it's like Siri or something, it'll be right within the thing. If it's the writing tools, ChatGPT will just dump out the text right in line. It's like integrated right within the thing, but it's always going to ask you permission.
Right.
And then Apple's they said, we're doing ChatGPT. It's the GPT 4.0 model. We think people are going to want to use other models. We plan to support other models at some point in the future. So if you like Google Gemini or any of those things, you do not need a ChatGPT account for this. You never need to sign in anywhere. You never need to do any of that stuff. But if you have a ChatGPT subscription, you can sign in, and then you get all the advanced tools that you paid for. You get all that stuff in there too. All that's coming after the first release, by the way.
Yeah. And Apple says all these features will be free.
They're all free. And they're all iPhone, iPad, and Mac only.
Yeah.
No Vision Pro. No.
I have to assume
Apple
at some
TV,
point there will be Apple Intelligence Plus that takes it to another level and
that you
charges you. Yeah.
Or it'll be part of iCloud Plus or something,
or that. Something like that.
They'll find some way to attach this to something that you pay money for sure.
Right, because they have to pay off that ChatGPT license one way or another, right?
Oh man, I think OpenAI is paying them.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible.
Kind of like
it certainly raises their profile.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Safari search thing. Where Google's paying.
It's true. It's not true that once you talk to ChatGPT that none of your data is being saved or anything like that. It doesn't know who you are. Your IP is being anonymized, and it's sending just the data for your request. It's not sucking up your whole photos library or anything like that. But that request and the data in it and the reply, ChatGPT can save that, right? So that is or I should say OpenAI. OpenAI can save that. So they're getting that out of it. They're getting probably a couple 100 million users.
Right.
I'd say a billion, except there's a lot of hardware this won't run on. That they're going to get a bunch of data out of it at first, and like you said, it raises their profile, and it might get people to upgrade and to subscribe to ChatGPT. So I wouldn't be surprised if OpenAI was paying Apple.
You bring up the hardware. We should mention the specs for Apple Intelligence. With the iPhone, it's only going to work on the iPhone 15 Pro or later.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
They're not going to make another device that doesn't support it, but as of now, there's only 2 phones that does.
Yeah.
The iPhone 15 Pro, iPhone 15 Pro Max.
Yeah. And then on the Mac, you have to have an M1 processor or later.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the same as for the iPad.
iPad as well, yeah. So there's a bunch of iPads that won't be. So Ming-Chi Kuo had a report this morning that kind of spelled it out, and it has to do with memory. So all of the M1 Macs and iPads have at least 8 gigabytes of RAM. Even the iPad Air has 8. The iPad Pro is 8 and 16. The Macs go up to like 96. The iPhone, until this year, had 6 gigabytes of RAM. The iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max got 8 for the first time. Mm-hmm. The 15 and 15 Plus still have 6. The rumor is, and now I absolutely believe it, that the entire iPhone 16 line will have 8 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah, we talked about this in an earlier thing. We wrote an article sort of a while ago suspecting that this might happen, where it's like, well, it's RAM. These models are big. Yeah. Right. It works out to, I think, Apple went into some detail about their large language model that runs on device, and it can take up to about 1.5 gigs of memory. And if you have a 6 gig phone, that's going to start to impact how well all your other apps run when you eat up 1.5 gigs of that. So it's memory.
Do you think, Jason, that devices with 8 gigabytes of RAM will run it significantly slower than devices with 16 gigabytes of RAM?
I don't think, because I don't think these models are taxing on the neural engine.
Okay.
Maybe the image generation would be the slowest part, but like I think the limit is the model's big and it just takes a lot of RAM.
Got it.
And probably storage.
Yeah, probably.
Like it's gonna eat up a couple gigs of storage. There's basically expert modules that get swapped out on the fly as it does stuff. So there's probably 2 or more gigs of just AI model stuff built into iOS 18's space.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you want to, it's going to be English only, but when you start supporting other languages, that will require additional storage space. But it's just RAM, and everything's going to have 8 gigs or more from here on out. They announced for developers code generation in Xcode. It runs on device, and that requires Macs with 16 gigs. So if you have an 8 gig...
they do make a MacBook Pro with 8 gigabytes of RAM. They make an M3 with 8 gigabytes
Xcode
of RAM.
16 will work, and it'll be fine, and you just won't get the AI code generation. Yeah. So,
it's big.
It is big. It's kind of a big deal for that
it also,
narrow slice of...
It kind of tips Apple's hand and says that probably the M4 MacBook Pro will start at 16 gigabytes of RAM, which it should have all along, but my guess is that's what we're getting. The Air will still have 8.
The Air should have 16 too. Come on, it's 2024. It should, but it won't. You're right. Because they don't. That's not a computer for people who run Xcode. We're going to run into this problem again in a couple of years when the next sort of step change in AI happens, and they're doing more it's not just they're doing audio generation and all this other stuff. The models are bigger and fancier. You might need more than 8 gigs, and we're gonna have this cutoff where you're gonna go like, I just bought my phone last year, and you're gonna get mad that it doesn't run the new stuff.
Based on the trajectory just leading to this point, it might be a lot less than a couple of years. I mean, this thing moves quick.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, the fact. I mean, ChatGPT was like a year and a half ago, and it was like, oh, that's neat. And now, it's just
there's some
the things it's able to do is like, wow, that didn't take long at all.
There's some really good research going on into how to get these things to fit into be smaller. So we'll see. Both things are happening at once.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about a super upgrade cycle, like it's this mythical thing and stuff. But it could genuinely happen.
It could.
Just
Absolutely.
Because
maybe not in September, but maybe within 6 to 12 months, once people start understanding like what this does and that my phone can't do it. Yeah. I use my parents as a barometer, and they both asked me about it Monday. Like, what is Apple Intelligence? Will my phone be able to use it? What can I do with it? So that, like, they saw it on like their local news, so it's already out there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And it'll be on Good Morning America. Like, that's the Apple stuff. Like, they immediately enter the zeitgeist. None of what we saw with Apple Intelligence is necessarily new, but nobody else is doing it. First of all, on device like this, and all kind of integrated and personal on on a device you buy. Samsung, Google, like they have bits of it. Google, certainly, Samsung as well, but the S24 has a lot of these pieces. Yeah. No one is doing it like this. Once this all comes together and the entire thing comes out of beta and works together, it's pretty incredible.
It's not just Apple's apps. There are APIs for developers to all this. If you have an app and you want to do this image generation stuff in it, there's an API for you to integrate it into your app stuff. So that this stuff is going to be everywhere. It's a lot. And if that was it, we would go, wow, iOS 18, macOS, iPadOS, that's a big upgrade. And that's just the AI stuff. They have regular OS upgrades to go with all this.
So the first half of WWDC felt like it was on 2x mode because there was so much information crammed into such a small space. Right. Because they wanted to spend 45 minutes on this Apple Intelligence stuff. So inside of an hour, they zipped through every single major new feature for all of its operating systems, and our heads were spinning. Can you take a 2-minute break so I could digest some of this? Yes. There was so much stuff. Yeah.
And it was, it's a lot of, there's a lot of features that beyond all the AI stuff. And then which I guess is why they set it up that way. They here's all the features of the OSs, and we're going to have a whole separate section that's almost half the event just to talk about AI.
It was, yeah. And I think they set it up that way because, for one, most people aren't going to be getting it in iOS 18. So to include all that stuff and say, oh, by the way, 95% of phones are going to get this whole thing that they really want. Yeah. So it makes sense to show the features that everyone's getting, and then at the end say, oh, by the way, all this stuff, if you want to get a new phone, here's everything else you're getting.
That's a good segue into the...
I was trying to help you out.
You did. Thank you very much, Jason. You laid it all out. So we should start with iOS 18, which is the big one. We've got all the AI stuff, but there's more.
So much more.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about every new feature they announced. But maybe Jason could talk about a couple of the features that left a big impression on him.
First we should note, none of the AI stuff is in the beta yet. We said that. And RCS support, which is coming to messages, is also not in the beta. So if you were really excited to try out the beta for those reasons, this is just wait.
Right.
So the biggest features are, customization is a key one, right? So you can finally put your app icons anywhere on the home screen you want. I know it's ridiculous that it's 2024 and this is a new feature, but it is. There you go. Finally, you can put them on the bottom and leave space, and it's fine.
Yes.
And together with focus modes, because focus modes let you have a different home screen layout when that focus mode is active and stuff. So that could be kind of a fun thing to play around with. So that's new. There's a new thing where when you're in dark mode, you can have the icons also go into like a dark mode where it makes all the white backgrounds black and changes the tint and stuff. And then you can just also tint your icons. Just take all the colorful graphics that are on there and just give them a tint.
That's gotta be the most un-Apple crazy thing I've ever seen in a general iOS release.
It like suggests one based on your background, and it may not look great. And some of these don't look bad, but you can just make it look terrible.
Yeah,
and people are.
They're all over the place, like really ugly home screens. But it's like, first of all, it takes away the personality of the icon that was created, which Apple does seemingly care about.
Yeah,
and for another thing, like you say, it opens it up to really ugly home screens that people are purposely making and sharing to show how wild this is.
I'm all for it because you chose to do that. Like, it's never going to make it ugly for you.
Sure. That's for sure. You don't have to do any of it if you don't want to. It's there.
There's no accounting for taste. They let you do it. I'm all for it. Okay.
Yes.
Control Center is another place. Big customization upgrades to Control Center. Control Center,
different.
Which
there's different pages now. It's all different.
So frustrated that people don't even know is there. Apple's going to have to find some way to tell people about Control Center because it's so important now. It's getting a new layout. It's getting some new stuff. It's in multiple pages now with nice little icons on the side to show you what the pages are. So you can have like a page just for your music controls and just for your home controls and whatever. Mm-hmm. You can drag and drop and move them around. You can add things. You can, when you go into edit mode, you can just drag the icon bigger or smaller. Same thing with the home screen, not your icons, but your widgets on the home screen. Just drag them bigger and smaller. You don't have to like delete the widget and add the smaller version or whatever.
Right.
So all those changes you can do boxes, but there's also an API for developers to add controls to Control Center, which there never was before. There was just Apple's controls. So now you're going to have your car app and all that other stuff. I'm dying to have a Control Center control that turns on the AC in my car, which is a thing I can do, but I have to open my Tesla app and hit the thing. And I do that all the time just to cool down my car when I
feel like that's a first world problem, Jason, but okay.
Forget about cars. Anything else. Just all your other music apps, anything else. Like they can all make Control Center stuff now. So that's a big one. Those two little buttons on your lock screen, the flashlight and the camera, you can replace those with any Control Center control.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that?
Anyone you want.
I bet most people are going to stick with the camera and the flashlight because they actually are useful. And those are the two of the things that when your phone is locked, that's probably one of the two things you want to get to.
Yep.
I use the flashlight all the time. All the time.
Same with the action button. If you have one of the new iPhones with the action button, you can set the action button to one of the Control Center controls. Which, when you think about all the third-party controls, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like 4 years of customizing that stuff that they gave us at once. They usually kind of do like dribs and drabs. They slowly give. It's like, all right, you want it? Here's all of it.
Yeah, yep.
Everything you've ever wanted to do with your phone, here. Go ahead. Stop bothering us.
That goes into privacy stuff. You can lock apps. So when you hand somebody your phone, even though your phone's unlocked, it requires Face ID to get into that app. And all you do is long press on an app, and there's in the little context menu that pops up, there's a require Face ID, and you just check that box. Now nobody can open that app. And they did all the smart stuff, like if you have an app that's locked that way, its notifications will be hidden. It won't, pop up in Siri suggestions or Spotlight search suggestions, or anything like that. And then you can, if you don't even want somebody to know you have an app installed, yes, you can hide apps now. There's a hidden apps section in App Library that doesn't show up unless your Face ID is showing.
Both of those are, I think, probably among the the best features that Apple came out with. I mean, they seem
Yeah.
a couple years overdue, but
Way
locking
overdue,
apps
yeah.
and hiding apps, even if it's not for the reasons they said.
I
Like, there
don't
are
think
some.
there's a ton of Android users listening to the Macworld podcast, but they're screaming right now because they've had this stuff for years.
Yeah,
And it's like,
sure.
we know. That
Yeah, I
doesn't
get
mean
it.
it's not good that it's finally coming to iPhone. And it is, and it's finally coming. And then there's a bunch of app updates. There's things like in messages, formatting text in messages, and RCS support. There's fun format text things like cool animations, but you can also just bold and underline and strike through. There's all the new inline emoji stuff. You can finally schedule messages to send at a certain
Yes.
time.
And I
So-
read a thing online that says if you schedule a message and turn your phone off, it will still send. It's not like on device. It's like waiting in the iMessage
cloud.
server thing. Yeah.
Yeah, which is exactly what you
that's-
want to do, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's almost not useless. But you could set a reminder to text somebody if you knew you were going to be online. The whole point is to go,
Right.
that you don't want to be able to forget.
Yeah.
The emergency satellite messaging is going to be not just for emergencies. You'll be able to iMessage or SMS people using satellite.
Whenever they talked about this emergency SOS stuff before, they would
Mhm.
say it's free for 2 years, and then we'll talk.
Yeah,
That's nowhere listed on the website anymore, and they didn't talk about it in the keynote. So perhaps it's just free now because they didn't say.
I don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
It used to be a caveat. Then they extended it for a year last year. But now, when they talked about it, you would think that this is when they would say, oh, it costs $3 a month or whatever it is, because this is texting anybody is something that's actually useful. Whereas the other one is just a life-saving thing that you hopefully won't need and very possibly won't. This one, I think people would actually pay for, but they don't seem to be charging.
I just wonder if the volume of people who are just so far out of cell that they can't text somebody and actually have to use the satellite
maybe
is small enough that they just eat it. But
possibly
it just seems weird. Yeah. So they didn't mention that, but
and I checked the website, like the little footnotes thing, and there's nothing there that says, free until blah blah date.
Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on. So we already talked about the mail changes that have to do with the AI, all the categorization of stuff and everything, and making digest views of all the mails you get from, Panera or United or whatever, so that you can at a glance see all the important info. That's AI stuff that's going to come a little later this year. There are other nice app updates like Calendar. Calendar, first it'll show you reminders that are for a specific date in Calendar, and you can just tap them to complete them in the Calendar app. You don't have to hop around. The monthly view shows. It used to show all the days and a dot.
Those dots were absolutely useless. We had those dots for like a decade.
Right.
And you would know that there would be something maybe on that day that's important, but we don't know what it is, and you got to click into it.
So you had to go look at the day, and then you had to go back to the month. Now you can just see all of your calendar things on that thing, and you can actually pinch to zoom out and just show more lines, so you can see more stuff, and you actually show text and read them. It's a good thing. Big overhaul to Photos. Photos is getting they call it the biggest redesign ever. But it puts your photo library on top, and then just below that, all of your sort of auto-generated collections and categories, things like your albums, your people and places, trips, collections you've pinned, all that stuff's going to be just below it, and then it's going to do a better job of auto-generating memories for you and things that it's done before. It's basically just it's making the Photos app layout and everything different. It's not a huge feature change outside of the AI stuff. AI stuff is, being able to find specific photos, even specific moments within videos with crazy AI. They're doing the magic eraser thing where you can eliminate some person from the background of your photo and stuff like that. But that all goes into the AI stuff. The redesign, it's getting sort of mixed reviews in the beta so far. I think some of that is just people hate new stuff, but
it seems to be a little bit buggier not functionally, but like visually. So I think that's what people are reacting to more so than like, listen, we've been through this with iOS 7, with iOS 10. I mean, people, like Jason says, people don't really like when things change. They'll get used to it inside of 2 weeks and it'll be fine.
And some of it is, it's the first developer beta and they take feedback and change it sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
We certainly saw that when they moved Safari was the bar big one, to the bottom. They made every beta had some change to that Safari bar at the bottom and everything. And they ultimately did the whole thing where they keep it at the bottom, but they made so many changes to address complaints. So maybe they'll do that with the photos stuff as well. It's not bad. It's not like it's like, oh God, I can't use photos now. But and then there's a ton of little things. They've made all these. They fixed the queue in Apple Music and just there's all these little things that are there. But we could just easily fill up the whole podcast just talking about iOS 18. And we have
we're 45 minutes in and we have 5 more. Maybe we have to break for the next week.
Right. Yeah. So, and I'm tired of talking, so I'm going to drink some coffee while one of you talks about macOS.
Some of the big features that are coming to macOS. The one that I was most excited about is the iPhone mirroring feature. This lets you access your iPhone on your desktop on your Mac. So your iPhone appears on your Mac and then you can use your iPhone. Don't know what the limits will be on that. For example, if there's a video streaming app on your iPhone that you want to use, that because there's no Mac app, the video may not play if that app doesn't support AirPlay, things like that. So there might be some limitations. Yeah, it didn't occur to me until afterwards, but I was wondering, will apps that you use for two-factor authentication work? Well, that's still things like that. So, but it looks like you'll be able to have almost full functionality of your iPhone through your Mac, and it's pretty cool.
I was so psyched for this because, I mean, first of all, there's plenty of things that just like Macs can run iPhone and iPad apps, but there's like so many that it just doesn't, right? And it's not a thing, and that's. So you want TikTok on your desktop, you could just like show your iPhone and just watch all the TikTok videos you want or something. Your iPhone stays locked. Like somebody walks over and picks up your iPhone. It's not going to be showing what you're doing on your Mac, right? It's, so they thought about things like that, like the privacy issues and stuff like that. I just thought this was the best feature. I've been waiting for this for so long. Audio comes through your Mac instead of through your iPhone. So you're like, if you're using your Mac, you would, and especially if you have headphones or something, you're listening to your Mac. You don't want to not be able to hear your iPhone, So they thought these things through. I think it's really awesome. Yeah. I want this on Vision Pro. Like, I don't know why this. I immediately thought, why isn't this on Vision Pro?
Like a lot of these features, I'm sure will come to, like, so reverse that. Can your iPad see your Mac screen? Can your Mac see your iPad screen? Like, I'm sure this is just the first step of this stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait.
The whole continuity, like, ecosystem, whatever we want to call it, framework is pretty amazing. It's one of those things that only Apple can really do because they have such a tightly integrated family of devices that are all, that all talk to each other all the time.
It's another thing that also isn't in the beta yet. So as excited as you may be to load the beta and try this stuff, that one's not in yet either.
It's not in it.
All the good stuff's not there yet.
There's going to be a new password app. So if you use a password manager like 1Password or LastPass or something like that, Apple's finally coming out with their own. I mean, Apple always has had this password management system through Keychain, but it was not an easy way to access that data. You had to do it through Safari or through Keychain itself. And if you ever gone through Keychain, that UI is like, it wasn't made for normal users.
That was made for an emergency. Like, I need to delete a saved password. It wasn't really meant for password management.
Yeah.
I've checked this out. It's good. it still works with things like Chrome. Like people have been asking, well, will it work with Chrome? It already does. Like there's already a Chrome extension to use your keychain passwords with Chrome. That still works. That works on Windows. They're going to do a Windows version of the Passwords app as well. I don't think that's
there's a
out
Windows
in
app
beta
coming
yet.
out presumably at the same time that iOS 18 arrives.
Yeah,
Or macOS
maybe
15.
even beta
it's on all the
before that.
devices.
But it's But the Password app is on all your devices, and that works across, and it supports two-factor authentication, so you can open up and see your two-factor authentication codes, add those with a QR code and all that stuff. It seems pretty good. I don't know that this like quote kills 1Password, but it does check a lot of boxes for casual users. You can share passwords easily with your family and stuff like that.
I think that's the big thing there is that I know
good.
so many people in my life that don't use password managers because they don't want to pay for it. They think they're too complicated. They don't understand. This is going to kind of bring that to everybody. I agree with Jason. I'm going to keep 1Password. I don't think many people who use it regularly will change it.
I might dump mine just
because
because.
You might dump yours?
Yeah, just because I also use Authy for two-factor authentication codes. Yep. Authy doesn't let you export your codes, unfortunately. So re-adding them in the Password app is going to be a pain. I'll have to go to each service, turn off two-factor, turn it on, and re-add. It's a pain. But if I can get rid of 1Password in that subscription and stop using Authy on my phone and just have my Passwords app, I'm not going to know until I see what the Windows app is like, because I do use Windows frequently as well. But I don't need it. I don't need a lot of advanced stuff, and I don't need to access it all on the web, and I don't need like Linux support. I think basically checks enough boxes for me to go like, well, I don't need to pay anymore. If this is free, I don't need to pay. But there are definitely people who need the things that like 1Password does, or any of these other LastPass. There's a bunch.
Yeah, I'm a 1Password user also, and I've been weaning myself off of 1Password and relying more on Apple's stuff. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I use too many Macs, and especially like if I'm reviewing a new Mac and I don't have I don't want to put 1Password on that test machine, and so accessing those passwords it's kind of kludgy. And also, and this is a whole different thing, but a while ago, 1Password they used to be very attentive to Apple and macOS and everything, and they've kind of lost that.
There's that whole thing where like they used to make a Mac app that used all the Mac APIs and was really focused on being the best Mac app, and they had a Windows apps and stuff, but then they switched to an Electron app where it's like, we're going to develop it once and it's going to be the same on all platforms and stuff. And I understand that from a development standpoint, but from an Apple user standpoint, you kind of feel like, why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, that's because that's Apple only, and we're trying to just make it the same on all platforms.
Other Mac features, Apple is finally including an ability to better organize your windows with Windows tiling. This is kind of like a long time feature that people have been wanting, and some users have even gone to like third-party tools to address this.
Yeah, they just got Sherlocked.
Well, we'll see, because like I'm working on something right now and basically seeing what you get from a third-party utility like Moom or Rectangle or these other utilities that people use for Windows tiling.
Magnet?
There are a lot of them. And it looks like Apple's implementation is somewhat basic. So
it seems pretty simplistic, but
well, it kind of takes they had the side-by-side thing, and now you got like quadrants.
It's
just like an extension of that.
When you drag to the corners, it automatically kind of suggests a snap. But I think again, it's one of those things where like for 90% of people, that's enough. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I know
right.
when you want to get complicated,
Yeah,
it's
but
go
the
like,
people
well,
who
I
do
saved.
use those services probably are going to keep them.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
might, especially if, you know, if you're hardcore and you're like, well, I have 5 different desktops and they have different like snapshots of things.
Right,
And when I restart my computer, I want to reload all my things. You know, it's not doing all that. So,
Yeah. Those are kind of the major changes. I mean, there's also some new video conferencing improvements. All the AI stuff's going to be there.
yeah,
The Safari stuff's going to be there as well.
all the messages stuff,
Yeah.
message text formatting.
Yeah. I know we just talked about AI, iOS, and macOS. We're going to save the rest of it for next week. And that's going to be a long show as well.
Our plan here.
Yeah.
We thought we could quickly run through.
Yeah,
some
yeah.
features,
No,
but-
there's a lot to cover. I mean, Apple took, almost 2 hours. So
It was close, yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So we're going to wrap it up here. But join us next week where we'll cover the other things that Apple discussed at WWDC. You can also check out our website for articles if you can't wait for the podcast. That does it for this episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 888. Thanks to Jason Cross.
Thank you.
Thanks to Michael Simon.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to you, the audience. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to the Macworld Podcast in the podcast app, on Spotify, or through any other podcast app. If you have any comments or questions, send us an email at podcast@macworld.com or contact us through X, that's at Macworld, or on Threads, that's at Macworld_HQ, or on the Macworld Facebook page. Join us in the next episode of the Macworld Podcast, where we talk about the latest in the world of Apple. See you next time.